Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, okay, so this week we're on to the letter E, and well, not exactly a great deal of choice in that matter, as there is just the one distillery, and that's obviously Edradour. So, funnily enough, that's what I'm going to be tasting today. It's interesting, when I was sort of scrabbling around for samples, and I haven't got very many in actual fact, I realised that in actual fact the last time I tasted this, the 10-year-old, was 10 years ago, 2005. Wow. Anyway, yeah. Let's talk about Edradour then. Well, it's it's a lovely little distillery. It's small. I mean, I think its capacity is somewhere around about sort of 100,000, 120,000 litres of alcohol per year, which is what some of the bigger distilleries churn out in about a week, really. So it's a nice small distillery. Lots of people go up there, up to Pitlochry and visit it. It was founded in, well, they believe it was founded in 1825, although it wasn't. I don't believe it was called Edradour then. They believe it was called Glen Forest. The term or the name Edradour wasn't mentioned in records until about another 11 years later. Went through various hands, or a couple of owners prior to being bought by Pernod Ricard in 1975. Funnily enough, it wasn't actually, and then until 1986 apparently, that they actually sort of released their first single malt, and they've been releasing interesting stuff kind of ever since, it has to be said. I mean, the standard 10-year-old, as you know, it's got a fair degree of sherry, but they do all these weird and wonderful little bottlings like this one, the Chateauneuf finish, which we'll get onto when I introduce the lineup. But they do no end of little from the cask bottlings in these lovely little wooden boxes with a Hessian sack and all this kind of stuff, and they generally just tend to taste of whatever they've been, aged in, red wine, whatever, and it makes you wonder what is the actual character of Edradour. So hopefully we'll find out. But I think the distillery have from time to time released purely American oak aged bottlings, and I think I tasted one once upon a time. But anyway. Let's crack on and introduce this afternoon's little lineup. So obviously we're going to start with the good old 10-year-old, bottled at 40%. Like I said, as you can see from the colour, quite a fair amount of sherry is used in that maturation. Now, interesting little tale about this particular one. This is the Edradour 11-year-old port matured, bottled at 46%. Now, look at the colour of that, will you? Do you think that's been inside a port barrel? I mean, there is nothing, no pink, no red, nothing at all. And I tasted this for the Whisky magazine. You may well have read the note in the Whisky magazine. And when I got the list back and saw this was, port matured, I sort of got in touch and said, surely this is wrong, it can't be right, there's no port in this, I didn't taste anything, it doesn't even have a pinkish hue, but no, apparently this is indeed port matured. So anyway, as I alluded to earlier on, this is the 12-year-old from the cask in the dumpy little bottle. This is been finished in ex-Chateauneuf-du-Pape casks, so probably Grenache and Mourvèdre and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be interesting. And finally we'll finish off with the oldest expression that I've got here, which is the fairly new bottling called the Fairy Flag, which is a 15-year-old. Now apparently the Fairy Flag is a Scottish film, I'm led to believe. Haven't seen it, don't know anything about it apart from it's to do with a fairy flag that gives you immunity or something like that. Anyway, no idea why they did that bottling. Maybe there's some kind of connection there, and no doubt one of you lot probably knows and will probably tell me. But anyway, that's beside the point, really, isn't it? We're here to taste some whiskey, so let's crack on with the 10-year-old then. Right, okay, so like I kind of said last week when we were talking about Deanston, and distilleries kind of their style of their whiskey kind of being sort of balanced, should we say, by what the distillery looks like. So Edradour is a pretty little distillery, so theoretically should be a pretty little malt. So let's have a look. It's a malty number, it has to be said. Quite a lot of sherry, more sherry than I remember, although like I said it was 10 years ago that I last tasted it. Soft treacle, herbal oloroso. Yeah, lots of malt. Maybe there's a little bit of barley underneath, but this is all pretty much about the sherry, it has to be said. Very clean sherry, very soft and treacly, but not too viscousy treacle. It's quite a light treacle. A little bit of spice coming through now. A little bit of sweety sort of. There's a little bit of burnt edge to the spice, but you know, nothing sort of untoward, shall we say. So it's quite an appealing nose if you like sort of, you know, fairly heavily sherry whiskies. Palate. Long, soft, very sherried, light treacle, quite drying finish, bit of tannin coming through on the finish, but the treacle sort of sherry sweetness is kind of still lingering and sort of balancing out that finish. A little bit of spice, dried fruits. Yeah, not really getting any kind of character other than the whiskey. I mean, it was a fleeting barley note right at the very beginning before all the sherry sort of like suddenly came through, but as a sherry whiskey goes, it's pretty pleasant, but it's not really giving me any clues to what the character of the spirit is like. Okay, and so moving on to the supposedly port matured. Let's see what the nose gives us. Well, like I said, there is, I mean, not an iota, not even a wininess, not even a subtle wininess. It's got some nice barley, some soft fruit, little bit of minerality, plenty of vanilla, a lot of vanilla in actual fact, creamy, quite bourbony it's becoming. I mean, yeah, alright, okay, maybe there is a little bit of red fruit, possibly a bit of spice, but it's more of the vanilla, more of the American oak I'm getting, this that fairly sort of robust bourbony kind of note. I mean, it's nice, it's a pleasant whiskey, but you know, I think you could sue this under the Trades Description Act to be honest with you, but yeah, it's pleasant, it's aromatic. Palate. Soft, quite sweet, plenty of barley, sugar, sort of granulated sugar, maybe a little bit of spicy fruit on the finish, a little bit of red fruit possibly, or maybe I'm just grasping at straws, but a lot of creamy American oak on the finish. Yeah, it's really quite pleasant actually. I mean, you know, just forget the sort of the port bit because there's no port there whatsoever. But as a malt in its own right, it's actually, you know, quite nice, you know. Right, okay, so on to from the cask. Now, a few of these I've tasted in the past, and they've been really tannic. It's like sort of almost licking out the inside of the cask. I mean, you know, maybe they should sort of do a bit of a Blackadder thing and stick some bits of wood in the actual bottle. But anyway, let's see what the nose gives us on this, shall we? Now, it's slight sulphur note, slight blemish. There's some syrup coated red fruits. I mean, this is more the colour I would have expected the port matured to be like. I just can't. That sulphur note is just really off-putting. It's got some big richness. It's almost got a sort of sherry cask richness, but no, none of that sort of treacle. Fruit is quite, like I said, quite syrupy. A little bit of spice. Yeah, if it wasn't for that sulphur note. Palate. Quite heavily sulphured, but there's dry, tannic, alcoholic finish, a little bit of soft winey red fruit, a little bit of barley, a little bit of chocolate on the finish. Yeah, it's that the sulphur note has just completely ruined that, to be bluntly honest with you, which is a real shame, because that could have been quite a nice malt, but these things kind of happen, don't they? Right, and finally on to the 15-year-old. Again, I would imagine combination first fill and probably refill Oloroso sherry cask, judging by the colour of this. So let's see what the nose gives us. Oh yes, lots of slightly burnt treacle. Toffee, coffee, more treacle, a little bit of herbalness, quite aromatic, soft, again thankfully unblemished, it has to be said, but it's a dense number, this. Yeah, 15, yeah, it seems about that sort of age. It's got, you know, the slight startings of some maturity, a little bit of oxidised dried fruit mingling with the sherry fruit, although the sherry fruit is more luscious and treacly rather than dried. Yeah, I mean, it's a pleasant nose. Again, you know, as you well know, and as I keep saying, sherry matured whiskies are not my favoured whisky, it has to be said, but it's a pleasant nose. Palate. Big, treacly, juicy sherry. And that's pretty much about it. It has to be said. A little bit of spice on the finish. Alcohol gives it a little bit of a cleansing note, a little bit of minerality as well. It's very soft, very rounded, not much in the way of tannins, which is quite surprising. But yeah, it's sherry, you know. Right, okay, so let's sum this little tasting up. So Edradour and sherry, they kind of go hand in hand, don't they, it has to be said. Which is a bit of a shame, it has to be said, because I think tasting the port matured, which, you know, if that's in a port cask, I'm bloody amazed. I mean, that must have been a damn well used number of port casks, that's all I can say. It's quite a light, elegant, barley-led, it's a nice malt. I mean, but so why just thump it full of sherry? You know, what is the point? I mean, you know, yeah, all right, the 10-year-old is nice, it's pleasant, but again, you know, I just really can't see the point in it. When you've got such a nice, elegant malt, why then just sort of like, you know, well, not ruin it, it's the wrong word, you know, why just mask all of that kind of character with sherry or with sulphoured wine casks, you know, it just, I don't get it. I really don't get it. And I know there's a load of people that love sherry matured whiskey, and you know, I don't mind the odd one. You know, I personally prefer them when they're a lot older. I think they actually then have some kind of complexity. You know, getting to about sort of 21 plus, and you know, you're getting that lovely, you know, mature old kind of sherry. Anything under that, it's all just fairly bland, homogeneous. It's like, oh yeah, treacle, sherry, walnuts. Maybe there's a bit of light and shade. Maybe there's, you know, a few other sort of notes coming through. But by and large, you know, it's just kind of like, well, yeah, just another sherried whiskey, you know. But and coming back to Edradour, yeah, I think they're producing some lovely malt, and I would like to see a lot more of it, just aged in American oak. You know, nothing mucked around with. But you know. It's obviously popular, people obviously buy it, so they'll carry on doing it, you know. And they have it, you know. So, Edradour, nice malt, shame about the Salford wine casks. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the show. Obviously next week we're moving on to F, and again, I'm kind of a bit spoilt for choice on that one, aren't I? It has to be said. Ooh, another member of the Axis of Evil coming up, so that should be an interesting tasting. So, anyway, until then, good dramming, good afternoon.